In my last episode review of Swamp Thing, I mentioned how this show was different than, a lot of the other DC shows, most of which are on the CW. And I guess Gotham's kind of like that too, or was like that. Gotham doesn't come on anymore. Where there's often a villain or problem of the week that they have to deal with, and then in the backdrop, there's an overall kind of plot or problem that weaves all these episodes together that usually comes to a head in the season finale. And Swamp Thing wasn't like that. At least it didn't seem that way to me. But this latest episode did seem to have a lot in common with those kinds of shows, because this one was like a problem of the week episode where not a villain of the week, but a problem, because there was no villain. It was like this disease. But basically the problem popped up. It was menacing people, and then Swamp Thing and Abby, by the end of the episode, nip it in the bud. And so I was like, this was kind of a villain of the week sort of episode. And then I started thinking more, and I was like, this isn't the first one like that. The guy that was infected with that thing that looked like the rot, where he would had all these bugs and stuff that Swamp Thing, dispatched, he was also a villain of the week of that episode. So maybe Swamp Thing isn't really that different from those shows than you think. And the fact that it does, the CW type shows in Gotham, where there is a villain or the problem of the week, at least sometimes. Overall, though, the pilot episode and, this is another episode weren't really like that. But this does have its own villain of the week kind of episodes. So I was thinking, yeah, it does have something in common with those CW shows. After all, at least a little bit. Overall, though, the show is very different from, Supergirl, The Flash. I mean, if you watch those shows and watch this one, that's very apparent. And one thing that really differentiates it from those is the gore. This episode was really gory in the beginning, when the guy, he was hallucinating with the snake on his hand in the diner in the washroom. He was stabbing his arm, and then he put it in the garbage disposal. And I watch a lot of horror and graphic stuff. I mean, you know what kind of stuff I watch on this channel, right? The movies I review and stuff. And even I had to look away a bit. I was like, whoa, this is pretty graphic. They didn't really show it the way I guess you do in a Saw movie or something, but still, I was like, whoa. So I was like, wow, Swamp Thing. I mean, we already knew Swamp Thing was a show that went there. I mean, there was some pretty graphic stuff in earlier episodes, but in this episode, we got a bunch of graphic stuff. It was a lot in one scene. They saved a lot of gore and stuff for this one moment in this episode, and it was early in the episode too. It was in the first 15 or 20 minutes, and I was very I was shocked because I wasn't expecting. I mean, this is a horror show, but I wasn't expecting them to put that much gore in one scene, in one episode, so early. I expected it to be a bit more muted and subdued. But, Swamp Thing is a show that goes there. And I think that as it goes later on in the seasons, they seem to use the gore when they think it fits the plot. I mean, I don't think this show is excessive, which I think works in its favor. A movie like Saw, or other movies like that, it's just how many graphic things can we show in an hour and a half, 2 hours? How far can we push the envelope? Whereas, the gore here, for one thing, this show is not like Saw, but it's, similar to the fact that they show the gore, it's just not as graphic. It doesn't really seem like they're being gory for the sake of gory. It does seem to come up when they need it for a certain scene, or a certain plot element, which happened here. And also, another thing going along is with the characters. I like how as we're getting later on in the season, things are kind of coming together. As we see Abby and Swamp Thing work together to nip this disease or spirit problem of this episode in the bud, they're more used to each other. I like the format of the show. At this point, Abby knows she can just go into the swamp and try to find Swamp Thing. He'll come, they can talk and plan and strategize. It seems to be leaving behind the whole scenario where, Swamp Thing shows up out of nowhere and she's like, what's that? Or people are like, what's this? And he goes away, you never see him again. It seems like he's becoming more of a natural, organic fit with her in the show. And it's less of a surprise. And it's like, oh, there's Swamp Thing. And I like seeing the two of them coming together as a team or as people who can trust each other, rather than, it's some monster that shows up and goes away. Swamp Thing seems to be becoming more of comfortable in his own show, basically, is what I'm getting at. And the writers are writing him as a natural part of his own show now, rather than some, you know, person who pops up and then vanishes and then comes, you know, by when you need him. He's still sort of like that, but he seems to be becoming a bit more of a fit. And I like that. You know, him and Abby are becoming more used to each other. And, you know, I would like to see Swamp Thing become more of like a coherent, you know, active part in his own show where he's an actual part of the plot rather than someone who just pops in to beat somebody up and then just leave. You know, seeing Swamp Thing help to figure things out and, you know, talk to people, it makes him seem like a regular character on the show, and he can actually become more of like a main character and a main focus of a show that's named after him. And, you know, the other supporting players are moving along. We saw more of, you know, Dan Cassidy, aka Blue Devil, and Madame Xanadu talking about, you know, his destiny or what he's been called to the town to do. I think that since this is like the second or third time that's been mentioned in the span of 4 episodes, it's about time to see him become the Blue Devil or actually do what he's meant to do. Because the more we hear her talk about, or hear more her talk about, you know, his destiny or what, you know, he's been called to the town to do without showing it, the more it becomes, you know, repetitive. And it's like, well, okay, let's get there then. You know, you're mentioning the same thing over and over again. I don't think they've done it so much. I don't think they're there yet where it's becoming tiring. But I do think that they've got to hurry up and, you know, reveal what it is he's going to do or meant to do, and not just keep talking about it. If they keep talking about it, you know, and then, you know, like 3 or 4 more times before he actually turns into the Blue Devil, it's going to seem kind of like, come on, let's hurry it up. So, you know, by next episode or the episode after, we got to see, you know, we got to see some blue skin and some horns. And as for Susie Coyle, you know, she's being, I guess, taken in by the Sunderlands. I am wondering what, you know, what they're going to do with her character as the show goes on, what purpose she'll serve. I mean, I know that Maria seems to be kind of substituting her dead daughter with Susie because she needs to have another daughter, another child to love. I get that. I think that's where she's coming from. That's why she seems so attached to this girl. And I know Avery wants to take the girl in for his own, you know, kind of self-serving purposes. But I do wonder what the point is of the writers putting her on the show. I thought originally she was just going to be some, you know, girl who'd be saved and then you'd never see her again. But they seem to be making her more of an important character in the show. Well, she'll show up on more episodes going down the line. So I'm wondering what their eventual plan is for her character and why they even have her living with the Sunderlands in the first place. So I am curious. I'm wondering where they're going to go with her in this plot line. You know, this little girl living in the Sunderland's house when, you know, they easily couldn't have had that in there. But all in all, good episode. I am intrigued to see where things go. And I like seeing and comparing and contrasting how this fits with the other DC shows they're on. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please like it on YouTube and subscribe to the channel because I appreciate your viewership, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.